Hey guys, it's Joe from American Muscle, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at the SR Performance underdrive pulleys fitting all 05 to 10 GTs. This is going to be a great option for the bolt-on 3-valve owner out there that's at the end of their build list and they're looking to get every last bit of horsepower out of their 4.6. So what do we have going on here with the SR Performance underdrive pulleys? Well, over here we have a brand new crank pulley that is going to be smaller in diameter than the factory one, and over here we have our new water pump pulley. That's going to be a little bit bigger in diameter than the factory one. In the middle here, we have a brand new bolt for the crank pulley. Now, in order for us to understand what these bad boys are going to do for your Mustang, we have to understand basically how these work first and how these are going to improve off of factory. Now, pulleys in general, they're there to power the accessories on your motor. That's going to be stuff such as your water pump, your alternator, your AC condenser, and they're going to cost a small amount of horsepower in order to do so, otherwise known as parasitic drag. This is why you, at least typically, don't see AC on Formula One cars because it would cost a little bit of extra horsepower to run it. Now, nobody wants to lose their AC just to gain 15 horsepower. That wouldn't make sense unless you're really in the track days. But with something like this, by downsizing our crank pulley a little bit and upping the size of our water pump pulley, we can lessen that parasitic drag by basically underdriving the accessories on our motor. This isn't going to be a huge horsepower gain, but like I said earlier, if you have all the bolt-ons done in your 3-valve, you're looking for something to do to net just that little bit extra, this is going to be a great pickup. Definitely a great supporting mod, end of the build type of stuff here, but a great mod nonetheless. Now, another huge benefit of these is they're also made out of a lightweight aluminum. So that's going to lessen a little bit of rotating mass, and if you're doing any track days, that's exactly what you want. It's not going to be a huge amount like an aluminum flywheel or a lightweight drive shaft would give you, but less rotating mass is always a good thing. This is going to help your motor spin up to redline as fast as possible. Again, not a huge gain, but something to consider. These are also SFI certified, and there's no tune required in order to get the gains that something like this would give you. Pricing is going to drop in right around 160 bucks, and that's really not a bad price to pay when it comes to netting some free horsepower that was there to begin with. It's just reclaiming it back from those accessories. So this is definitely a good pickup again if you're at the end of your build. The install here, albeit this is not your regular old cold air intake, something that easy, this is going to be a little bit tougher than that, but not too bad. You could definitely accomplish this in a couple of hours in the driveway if you come with the right tools. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 3 wrenches on our difficulty meter. I think you can get this done in about 2 to 3 hours if you take a look at this video and come with all the right knowledge. So without any further ado, let me show you what tools you'll need and then how it's done. Tools required for this install are going to include a breaker bar, cutoff wheel, die grinder, flathead, safety glasses, pulley removal tool, RTV, torque wrench, 18, 10, and 8mm sockets, an impact, and ratchets. So we're going to start with some disassembly in our engine bay. Coolant reservoir, that's going to have to get disconnected. Power steering reservoir, that's going to have to go. Also our intake tube here, that is going to be the easiest part. That's going to have to go as well. To loosen that up, the clamps are an 8mm socket. We're going to start right there. We're going to start by disconnecting our breather hose, and that is just going to be this green tab on the bottom. If you push down and pull over on that, that will loosen up like so. Then we can come in with the old ratchet here and loosen up the clamp on our throttle body. Again, 8mm socket. Over here by the air box, we have one more clamp, again 8mm. And then we can pull this whole thing off, just like so. Next up, our coolant reservoir, 2 8mm bolts to loosen that up. Hold on to those because you are going to need them later, obviously. And we can just pull this up, remove that hose, and put it over here by the air box. Power steering reservoir, that is another 8mm bolt. And again, hold on to that.
And we can pull that up off of our fan, and that can just kind of float there for now. I'm just gonna tuck it up by the airbox a little bit. Try to hold that in place right there. Next up, we have to get rid of this fan shroud and fan assembly, but we have to disconnect it first. This plug right here, there's a release tab over on this side. However, if it's never been apart on your 3-valve before, it can require the use of a screwdriver. There are 2 bolts that hold the fan on at the top, 1 on each side. Again, both 8mm, then you can pull the fan assembly out.
Here we have a clear shot at our water pump pulley, and while the belt is still installed, we're going to use that to hold it still while we crank the 4 bolts loose. And these are 10mm, by the way. We're going to loosen up our crank pulley while we're down here as well. This is an 18mm socket. Now we can get rid of the belt, and in order to do that, 1/2-inch drive breaker bar, and then off the top. With that out of the way, I'm just going to get rid of the rest of the 10s on our water pump pulley, and that is uninstalled. Removing the crank pulley, however, is not as simple. You're going to need to find one of these pulley remover tools, whether you buy one from Harbor Freight, rent one from Pep Boys or AutoZone. Pick one of these up because you are going to need it to get this guy off. The tension is just too much. You can see the one we have here, it just has that lip that goes around this lip on the pulley, and then we could use a socket to basically press against a bolt we have installed into our crankshaft, and this pulley is going to come with us when we turn this socket. And obviously, these arms here can be a little bit of a pain to set up, so I went ahead and did that off camera. And I'm just going to remove the bolt I used as a standoff, and we can pull out our pulley. So now that we have everything off of our Mustang, now's the perfect time to stop down, put these 2 sets of pulleys on the table next to each other, and highlight some key differences between these 2. The biggest difference is going to be the sizing. Over here you see our 2 crank pulleys. The stock one is going to be bigger. The aftermarket one is going to be a little bit smaller. Now these are going to be considered driving pulleys. So our engine is spinning at the same speed. 1 rotation of this is going to spin more of the belt because it's bigger in diameter than 1 rotation of this, which is going to be spinning the belt a smaller amount because it's smaller in diameter. Less distance for the belt to go 1 rotation all the way around this thing. So difference here, bigger is going to be faster, smaller is going to be a little bit slower, and again, that's there to reduce parasitic drag. Now weight is also a difference between these 2, like I mentioned earlier. This is aluminum, this is cast iron. The weight difference is small. Like I said, it is rotating mass, so every little bit of weight you can shave off is good. Next, we can talk about our water pump pulleys, and these are going to be a little bit different. The pulleys over here are crank pulleys. These are driving the belt, while our water pump pulleys, these are being driven by the belt. So these are going to be similar to a supercharger. The smaller you go on these, the faster it is going to spin the water pump, and same thing goes for all the other driven accessories. So this is our stock one over here. The bigger you go, the slower this is going to spin. And if I go like this, you can just see how much bigger that aftermarket water pump pulley is going to be. Same thing over here, we have aluminum, and this is going to be a drastic difference in terms of weight. The aluminum is a lot lighter than the factory stuff when it comes to the water pump pulley. So that pretty much sums up the differences between these two. There's one thing we have to take care of before we move on and install our new crank pulley, and that is RTV. We're gonna have to apply a little bit of this into the keyway to make sure everything seals up correctly and no oil escapes from that keyway. So now we can do our install. We're gonna start with the crank pulley. We're just gonna line up the keyway. That actually pushed right into place. A lot of times that will put up a little bit of a fight. That longer bolt in the kit is included so that if this does fight, you can throw a washer on there and use that to sort of pull this in to this position, and then you can install the factory bolt. Ours slid right on, so we're just gonna install the factory bolt. We're gonna wait to torque down our crank pulley until the belt is on. Hopefully that gives us a little bit of friction to fight against to tighten that down all the way. We wanna make sure we hit our torque spec with that one. But with that said, we're gonna move on to our water pump pulley, and while it looked easy coming off, going on is a little bit tougher. You can see the cutoff wheel in my hand here. Reason being, there's a stud in the way that's gonna have to go to make room for the larger water pump pulley. So we're gonna cut that off, clean up the stud a little bit, and then our water pump pulley should go right back on. Safety glasses for this one, guys. This guy has got to go. There's barely not enough clearance for our water pump pulley. That looks good. So we're gonna clean that up and install our pulley. So now we can put on our water pump pulley, and we're just gonna secure that with the factory 10mm bolts. Now that we have all of our pulleys applied, we're just gonna loop in our belt. So before we put our Mustang back together, we still have to torque down that crank bolt. There's a little bit of a process to that. First things first, you're gonna need a torque wrench, because the first thing you're gonna need to do is torque that bolt to 66 foot-pounds. Now once you hit that 66, we're gonna loosen a full 360 degrees, and then you could torque it to 37 foot-pounds, and then you add another 90 degrees quarter turn just to make sure it's seated properly. You're gonna need an 18mm socket to do so. So our first torque spec, that's gonna be 66 foot-pounds. Hopefully these don't spin right on the edge of it spinning. Then we can come off the full turn. Then we can lower the torque wrench to 37. And then we're gonna give that one more quarter turn just to make sure that's tight. And this is exactly how Ford recommends you tighten this down. Then we could start to rebuild by dropping back in our fan. And we can secure that with the two 8mm bolts, one in each corner. Don't forget to plug this back in as well.
Now after that, we can secure our power steering tank to the fan shroud. Again, this is an 8mm bolt. And we could do the same exact thing for our coolant reservoir as well. Last but certainly not least, we have to do our intake tube. That's going to go around the airbox and the throttle body. We could tighten down the clamps with an 8mm socket, but also we're going to click in this breather hose as well.
Guys, that is going to do it for the SR Performance underdrive pulleys, fitting all 05 to 10 3-valve GTs. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more like this one. Keep it right here at American Muscle for all things Mustang.